The pattern Cayce identified in his readings about mass reincarnation is no longer theoretical. It's measurably unfolding right now, and the signs are appearing exactly as he described they would. In the 1930s and 40s, during his prophetic trance states, Cayce repeatedly warned that souls from Atlantis, Rome, and other fallen civilizations would return en masse during this specific era, bringing with them both the wisdom of past failures and the unresolved karma of collective choices that destroyed their previous worlds. He saw that these returning souls wouldn't come back randomly. They would incarnate precisely when humanity faced the same spiritual tests their civilizations failed before, creating what he called a cycle of reckoning, where old patterns demand conscious resolution. Look around. The explosion of inexplicable childhood memories of other lives, the sudden mainstream acceptance of reincarnation concepts, the rise of young people instinctively rejecting materialism despite being raised in it, the widespread feeling of, "I've been here before," during global crises. These aren't coincidences. They're the exact markers Cayce said would confirm the return cycle had begun. This isn't about past life curiosity or spiritual entertainment. This is about recognizing that you might be one of these returning souls, carrying both the gifts and the unfinished business of civilizations that made the wrong choices. Are you observing these patterns in yourself and the world around you? Share your recognition in the comments. Edgar Cayce's prophecies about reincarnation weren't gentle philosophical musings about souls leisurely choosing when to return. They were urgent warnings about a specific mechanism he witnessed operating throughout human history. Souls from collapsed civilizations reincarnating en masse during periods when humanity approaches the same threshold that destroyed their previous worlds. This isn't random spiritual recycling. It's a law of consciousness Cayce observed with remarkable consistency across thousands of readings. When a civilization falls due to spiritual failure, prioritizing power over service, technology over wisdom, materialism over consciousness, the souls who participated in that collapse don't simply move on to unrelated future lives. They return together when conditions ripen for the same pattern to repeat, given another opportunity to make different choices. Cayce identified this as both cosmic justice and cosmic mercy. Justice because unresolved karma must be addressed, mercy because we're given another chance to get it right. Throughout his readings in the 1930s and 1940s, Cayce specifically warned that the mid to late 20th century and early 21st century would see unprecedented waves of reincarnation from three primary sources: Atlantis, Rome, and Egypt. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. He described actual souls who lived through the final days of Atlantis, that technologically advanced civilization that Cayce said destroyed itself through misuse of power and spiritual corruption, returning to face similar temptations during our technological age. He identified Roman souls who participated in the empire's moral decay, returning during an era of Western imperial decline. Egyptian souls from periods of both spiritual enlightenment and later degradation would return to participate in humanity's current spiritual crossroads. The timing wasn't arbitrary. Cayce saw that these souls would incarnate precisely when the modern world developed technology comparable to what destroyed Atlantis, when Western civilization exhibited the same moral hollowing that collapsed Rome, when humanity stood at a threshold between spiritual evolution and materialistic self-destruction. What makes Cayce's warnings particularly striking is how specific he was about the signs that would confirm this reincarnation cycle had begun. He said you would see young people born with inexplicable memories, not vague feelings, but specific recall of places, events, and relationships from civilizations that mainstream history barely acknowledged. He predicted a sudden shift in collective consciousness, where reincarnation would move from fringe belief to mainstream acceptance, not through religious conversion, but through direct experience and recognition. He warned that these returning souls would carry distinct characteristics: an instinctive distrust of unchecked technological advancement, deep anxiety about repeating past mistakes, natural spiritual abilities that previous generations rarely exhibited, and an urgent sense that time is running out to make different choices. Most significantly, he said these souls would experience what he called karmic recognition, moments when current events trigger visceral memories of how similar situations unfolded before, creating an overwhelming sense of, we've done this wrong before, and we know how it ends. Now observe what's actually happening around us. The evidence isn't subtle. It's overwhelming for anyone paying attention. Over the past 2 decades, documented cases of children with detailed past life memories have exploded globally, with researchers like Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia verifying thousands of cases where young children provide specific, historically accurate information about previous lives they couldn't possibly know through normal means. These aren't vague feelings. Children are naming specific people, places, and events from eras long before their birth, with accuracy that defies conventional explanation. More remarkably, many of these memories specifically involve ancient civilizations, advanced societies that collapsed, and traumatic collective events, exactly what Cayce predicted for returning Atlantean and Roman souls. The pattern isn't random childhood imagination. It's systematic recall emerging precisely when Cayce said the reincarnation wave would peak. Simultaneously, mainstream acceptance of reincarnation has shifted with unprecedented speed. Major surveys now show that over 30% of Americans, in a predominantly Christian culture that traditionally rejected reincarnation, believe in past lives, with percentages even higher among younger generations. This isn't gradual cultural evolution, it's a sudden threshold crossing. Reincarnation concepts appear casually in mainstream media, therapy practices incorporate past life regression, and millions openly discuss previous incarnations without social stigma. Cayce said this acceptance wouldn't come through religious teaching, but through direct experience and recognition, and that's exactly what we're witnessing. People aren't being convinced intellectually, they're remembering personally. The taboo didn't slowly erode, it collapsed suddenly as if a collective amnesia lifted. Look at the psychological patterns emerging in current generations, especially those born after 1980. There's a documented rise in what psychologists call existential anxiety in young people. Not anxiety about personal circumstances, but about collective trajectories, repeated historical mistakes, and humanity's survival. Many describe feeling like they're watching humanity make the same mistakes again, despite having no historical basis for that feeling in their current life experience. This isn't learned pessimism, it's visceral recognition. Therapists report increasing numbers of clients experiencing vivid dreams or waking visions of ancient catastrophes, technological disasters in advanced civilizations, and societal collapses, memories that feel personal, not imagined. These individuals often describe an urgent sense that they're here specifically to prevent repetition, that they carry hard-won wisdom from failure, and that current global crises feel hauntingly familiar. The technological parallel Cayce emphasized is now undeniable. He warned that Atlantean souls would return when humanity again developed technology powerful enough to destroy civilization, and used it with similar spiritual immaturity. Look at what we face. Artificial intelligence advancing faster than our wisdom to guide it, genetic manipulation without ethical framework, weapons technology that could end human life, environmental destruction through technological hubris, social media algorithms that manipulate consciousness itself. These aren't random modern problems. They're the exact pattern Cayce said would draw Atlantean souls back. Technology outpacing spiritual development, power without wisdom, capability without conscience. The difference is that this time, those who witnessed Atlantis's technological self-destruction are here, carrying cellular memory of how this ends if we make the same choices. Notice also the specific spiritual characteristics Cayce said would mark these returning souls. He predicted an explosion of natural psychic abilities, particularly in younger generations, and we're witnessing exactly that. Studies show significant increases in reported intuitive experiences, precognitive dreams, empathic sensitivity, and spontaneous spiritual experiences among millennials and Gen Z compared to previous generations. This isn't better reporting, it's actual increase in phenomena. Many young people describe sensing others' emotions involuntarily, knowing things they haven't learned, dreaming events before they occur, abilities that feel innate, not developed. Cayce said Atlantean souls in particular would return with psychic gifts that were normal in their previous civilization, creating a generation naturally attuned to non-physical realities. The widespread emergence of these abilities isn't cultural trend, it's biological and spiritual inheritance activated as predicted. The rejection of pure materialism among younger generations, despite being raised in history's most materialistic culture, presents another striking confirmation. Surveys show that Gen Z and younger millennials overwhelmingly prioritize meaning over money, experience over possessions, consciousness over career, and spiritual authenticity over institutional religion. This isn't typical youthful idealism that fades with age. It's a fundamental value inversion that persists and deepens. Many describe feeling instinctively repelled by the consumer culture they were born into, as if recognizing it leads somewhere they've been before, and it ended badly. Cayce specifically warned that returning Roman souls would carry visceral memory of how materialism and moral decay destroyed their empire, making them unable to enthusiastically participate in similar patterns, even when surrounded by them. We're watching an entire generation exhibit exactly that resistance. The historical parallels Cayce identified create an even more sobering recognition. He said souls from Atlantis would return during a period when humanity wielded godlike technological power without spiritual maturity. Check. He said Roman souls would incarnate when Western civilization exhibited imperial overreach, moral relativism, political corruption, and spiritual hollowing. Check. He said Egyptian souls from periods of both enlightenment and later corruption would return when humanity stood between two paths: evolutionary leap toward higher consciousness or descent into spiritual darkness. Check. These aren't vague symbolic parallels. They're specific pattern matches. The souls who lived through Atlantis's final days of technological hubris are here watching AI development. The souls who witnessed Rome's collapse through moral decay are here observing Western cultural disintegration. The souls who experienced Egypt's choice between spiritual illumination and materialistic corruption are here facing humanity's identical threshold. Cayce's concept of karmic recognition explains the widespread phenomenon that millions now report but struggle to articulate. Moments when current events trigger overwhelming certainty of, "I've experienced this pattern before, and I know how it ends." This isn't déjà vu or anxiety. It's cellular memory activating. People describe watching political polarization and feeling visceral certainty they've witnessed this tear a civilization apart before. They observe environmental destruction and experience memories, not metaphors but actual memories, of land sinking, ecosystems collapsing, advanced societies losing the foundation that sustained them. They see technological advancement outpacing wisdom and recall. With disturbing clarity, what happened last time? Humanity prioritized power over consciousness. These aren't psychological projections. They're karmic memories surfacing, exactly when and how Cayce said it would, when the pattern repeats closely enough to trigger recognition. The mechanism Cayce described operates through what he called the law of cycles. Civilizations don't collapse randomly. They follow predictable patterns determined by collective spiritual choices. When a civilization prioritizes material advancement over spiritual development, seeks power over service, chooses control over freedom, elevates technology over wisdom, it triggers specific consequences that play out across generations until the structure collapses. The souls who participated in those choices carry karmic responsibility, not as punishment, but as natural law. You help create a pattern. You return to help resolve it. Atlantis fell because spiritual gifts were weaponized for control. Rome fell because moral foundation eroded under materialism and corruption. Egypt's heights were lost when priestly knowledge became tool of power rather than service. In each case, Cayce saw the souls involved returning when humanity approached identical junctures, carrying both the trauma of failure and the potential wisdom to choose differently. What makes this cycle of reckoning particularly urgent is Cayce's observation that it's not infinite. Souls don't get endless attempts to pass the same test. He indicated that when reincarnation waves from previous failed civilizations return en masse, as they are now, it represents a culmination point. The souls are here together, specifically because this is the moment of collective choice. Humanity either learns from past patterns and evolves consciously, or repeats them and faces consequences that match or exceed what destroyed previous civilizations. Cayce never presented this as predetermined fate. He emphasized it as choice. But he was clear that the choice is time-sensitive. When the pattern reaches a certain momentum, the window for conscious intervention closes. The fact that Atlantean, Roman, and Egyptian souls are all incarnating simultaneously suggests we're approaching that threshold now. The responsibility this places on individuals who recognize these patterns is profound. If Cayce was right, if you're experiencing inexplicable memories, karmic recognition, urgent sense of repeating mistakes, instinctive rejection of materialistic patterns, natural spiritual abilities, you're not having random experiences. You're a returning soul who participated in previous failures and is here specifically to contribute to different outcomes. Your discomfort with current trajectories isn't personality, it's memory. Your sense that time is running out isn't anxiety, it's recognition. Your inability to ignore patterns others miss isn't neurosis, it's karmic assignment. Cayce taught that these returning souls didn't incarnate to passively witness another collapse. They came to actively interrupt the pattern through conscious choice, spiritual example, and refusal to repeat past mistakes, even when surrounded by those who are. This creates a specific spiritual mandate that Cayce emphasized repeatedly. Preparation must be conscious, not reactive. If you're a returning soul carrying karmic memory of civilizational failure, your role isn't to panic or retreat. It's to consciously embody different choices in the exact areas where previous civilizations failed. Where Atlantis weaponized spiritual gifts, you must use yours for healing and service. Where Rome prioritized materialism over meaning, you must demonstrate that consciousness matters more than possessions. Where Egypt's knowledge became tool of control, you must share wisdom freely. Where previous eras chose power over compassion, technology over wisdom, control over freedom, your incarnation demands you model the opposite, regardless of cultural pressure to conform. Cayce also warned about what he called the separation effect that occurs during these reincarnation cycles of reckoning. As karmic patterns intensify and souls recognize the test they're facing, a natural division emerges, not imposed by judgment, but created by choice. Some souls carrying memory of past failure consciously choose differently and align with spiritual evolution. Others, either lacking that memory or refusing its lessons, continue patterns that historically led to collapse. The separation isn't about superior versus inferior souls. It's about conscious versus unconscious participation in repeating cycles. Cayce indicated this separation would become increasingly visible as the cycle progresses. You'd see clear divergence between those preparing spiritually for transformation and those clinging to failing systems, between consciousness evolving and consciousness resisting, between souls learning from karma and souls repeating it. We're witnessing that separation accelerate now. Notice how people are polarizing not just politically, but existentially. Some sensing profound transition and preparing spiritually, others desperately defending systems clearly failing, some recognizing patterns and changing behavior, others repeating mistakes with increased intensity despite obvious consequences. This isn't random social division, it's karmic recognition creating alignment. Those who carry memory of previous collapses can't unknow what they know. They can't participate unconsciously in patterns they remember destroying civilizations before. Their karmic assignment is different choices, and that requirement naturally separates them from those making unconscious familiar choices. Cayce said this separation would intensify until the moment of collective decision, when humanity either consciously evolves or unconsciously repeats. The spiritual preparation Cayce prescribed for this cycle of reckoning is remarkably specific. It's not about accumulating knowledge or achieving mystical states. It's about embodying different choices in practical daily life in the exact areas where past civilizations failed. Practice using technology consciously rather than compulsively. You're retraining Atlantean karma. Prioritize meaning over money in actual decisions, not just philosophy. You're resolving Roman karma. Share knowledge freely rather than hoarding it for advantage. You're healing Egyptian karma. Choose compassion over control in relationships, wisdom over power in situations offering both, service over domination when given authority. These aren't abstract virtues. They're specific karmic corrections. Every time you choose differently than previous patterns, you weaken their hold on collective consciousness and strengthen the possibility of different outcomes. Cayce emphasized that returning souls must also work consciously with community, not isolated individualism. Civilizations don't collapse because a few individuals make wrong choices. They collapse when collective consciousness aligns with destructive patterns. They're saved, transformed, when enough individuals consciously align with different patterns that the collective tipping point shifts. If you're a returning soul recognizing these patterns, your spiritual work isn't just personal evolution. It's contributing to collective transformation. That means finding others who recognize what you recognize, supporting each other's commitment to different choices, creating communities that model alternatives to failing systems, and refusing to participate in collective unconsciousness even when it's culturally dominant. The souls didn't return individually. They returned as groups designed to work together toward different outcomes. The timeline Cayce suggested for this cycle of reckoning aligns disturbingly well with current global acceleration. He indicated that when the reincarnation wave reached its peak, which his reading suggested would be the late 20th and early 21st century, events would accelerate rapidly toward the moment of collective choice. Not gradually, but exponentially. You'd see changes that normally unfold across centuries, compressing into decades, then years, then months. Systems that seemed permanent would suddenly reveal fragility. Patterns that operated invisibly would become undeniable. The comfortable illusion that humanity has unlimited time to make better choices would shatter as the karmic bill from past failures comes due. Look around. Technological change accelerating beyond human adaptation. Climate patterns shifting faster than predicted. Social structures fragmenting rapidly. Economic systems revealing unsustainability, political institutions losing legitimacy, spiritual awakening intensifying alongside materialistic desperation. This isn't coincidental turbulence, it's karmic acceleration that Cayce said would mark the reckoning phase. What Cayce offered wasn't fatalistic prediction, but urgent opportunity. Yes, the pattern is repeating. Atlantean hubris with technology, Roman decay of values, Egyptian corruption of spiritual knowledge. Yes, returning souls are here carrying both trauma of past failures and responsibility to choose differently. Yes, the cycle is accelerating toward moment of collective decision, but the outcome isn't predetermined. The entire purpose of this reincarnation cycle, according to Cayce, is that consciousness can learn from pattern and choose evolution over repetition. The souls are here now together, specifically because this is the moment when conscious choice can still alter trajectory. Every person who recognizes the pattern and refuses to repeat it shifts collective probability. Every community that models different values weakens old structures' hold. Every conscious choice for wisdom over power, service over control, meaning over materialism, tips the balance toward transformation rather than collapse. The question Cayce's prophecy demands you ask yourself is uncomfortably direct. Am I one of these returning souls? Do my inexplicable memories, karmic recognitions, urgent sense of repeating patterns, instinctive rejection of materialism, natural spiritual abilities, an overwhelming feeling that I'm here for this specific moment indicate I participated in previous civilizations and returned to face the same test? And if so, am I consciously fulfilling that karmic assignment, or am I unconsciously repeating familiar patterns despite carrying memory of where they lead? The cycle of reckoning isn't happening to humanity abstractly. It's happening through specific souls incarnated now, carrying specific karma, facing specific choices. Your presence during this precise historical moment, Your recognition of these patterns, your inability to ignore what others dismiss, these aren't random circumstances, they're indicators of assignment. Cayce's ultimate message about this reincarnation cycle wasn't doom, but responsibility. The souls from Atlantis, Rome, and Egypt aren't here to witness another failure. They're here because their collective karma created patterns that must be resolved, and their collective consciousness can resolve them. The reckoning isn't punishment, it's opportunity. Final opportunity perhaps, but opportunity nonetheless. The pattern will repeat until consciousness learns from it. Either we learn now through recognition and conscious choice, or we learn later through consequences that mirror or exceed what destroyed previous civilizations. The souls are here. The pattern is visible. The choice is immediate. What you do with this recognition, how you respond to karmic memory, whether you align with evolution or repetition, these aren't philosophical questions. They're the spiritual assignment you incarnated to address. The cycle of reckoning is happening. The only question that remains is, will you recognize it in time to choose differently?